Before maps existed, humans navigated using vibes. You walked in a direction and just believed. If you got lost, there was no rerouting. You either found your way back, or, congratulations, you discovered a new home against your will. Directions were passed down like gossip. Go past the big rock, then the tree that looks angry, then panic. Shockingly inaccurate. This system relied entirely on memory, which we already know humans are terrible at. So, humans tried drawing maps on cave walls. These were not accurate. They were not to scale. But the confidence, unmatched. It was basically, trust me, bro, the river is this squiggly line. Rivers became the first reliable landmarks. Why? Because rivers don't move. They just sit there, being wet and helpful. If you followed the river, you'd probably survive. If you didn't, that's a skill issue. Once farming showed up, people suddenly cared about land, who owned it, where it ended, and who was stealing it. Maps were born out of arguments. The Babylonians created some of the first known maps. They carved them into clay tablets, which is bold, because if you drop it, your directions shatter. Paper, at the time, wasn't invented yet, and neither was forgiveness. The Egyptians mapped the Nile River, because when your entire civilization depends on one river flooding correctly, you don't mess around. This was less exploration and more, please don't starve. The Greeks looked at maps and said, what if we tried thinking? They introduced geometry and measurements, which made maps more accurate, but also way more annoying to make. Some Greek scholars figured out the earth was round. Yes, round, thousands of years ago. Everyone else said, that sounds fake, but I don't have evidence. So, sure. Okay, now meet Ptolemy, not the Egyptian pharaoh kind. This Ptolemy lived around 150 AD and decided, for absolutely no reason, that he was qualified to map the entire world from a desk. Ptolemy was a Greek scientist living in Roman Egypt, and he loved numbers. He believed that if you could measure the earth with math, then you could draw the whole planet on paper. So he invented something huge for maps: latitude and longitude. Latitude tells you how far north or south you are. Longitude tells you how far east or west you are. Basically, he created the world's first invisible grid, so locations could stop being described as near the big tree or past the scary mountain. Sounds genius, right? Well, here's the problem. Ptolemy never actually traveled to most of these places. He used rumors, traveler stories, old maps, and a lot of guessing. So, yes, his maps were revolutionary, but also wildly wrong. Continents were stretched, squished, or shoved into the wrong spots. Asia was way too big. The oceans were way too small. But because Ptolemy wrote everything down in a very official sounding book, people trusted him for over 1,000 years, which means for a millennium. The world looked like it was drawn by someone who almost knew what they were doing. Medieval maps stopped caring about accuracy. They were more about vibes. North wasn't up, Europe was huge, and everything unknown was just monsters. Now let's talk about one of the most honest things ever written on a map. Here be dragons. This wasn't a joke, and it was medieval map maker language for, we have absolutely no idea what's here, and we're scared. You mostly see here be dragons on oceans and seas, because ships disappeared there all the time, and nobody knew why. When map makers reached the edge of what was known, instead of leaving it blank, they filled it with monsters, sea serpents, giant fish, fire-breathing dragons. Not because they saw them, but because no one had come back to say they didn't. To be fair, sailing back then was terrifying. Boats were fragile, storms were violent, navigation was vibes based. If a sailor disappeared, the logical conclusion was obviously, yeah, probably dragons. These monster drawings served two purposes. One, they warned sailors that this area was dangerous and unknown. Two, They made the map look cooler because nothing says professional geography like a giant demon fish eating a boat. So when you see "here be dragons," what it really means is human knowledge stops here. And honestly, that's kind of relatable. Then the compass showed up. And for the first time, direction was based on science, not vibes. This was revolutionary. People could finally get lost accurately. Maps fueled the age of exploration. Sailors used them to cross oceans. And by explore, I mean accidentally show up somewhere uninvited and call it discovery. Maps weren't just for navigation, they were political. Kings made their kingdoms look huge, enemies looked tiny. Maps lied professionally. Then explorers showed up. Suddenly, maps had new continents, new coastlines, and way more oops moments. Exploration confirmed something shocking. The earth is round. Ancient Greeks were right. Everyone else owed them an apology. The printing press allowed maps to be copied accurately, just repeatedly, which meant fewer guess maps and fewer accidental empires. Then GPS arrived. Maps talk now. They tell you where to go. And we still miss the turn. Technology is amazing. So maps went from follow the river and hope to recalculating. Humans spent thousands of years learning directions, and we still argue with the map.